agora a gente vai focar em Impact Investing um pouquinho. E para isso eu chamo a Vanessa, que vai entrevistar o Amit Bouri, que é CEO do Global Impact Investors Network.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Amit, for this opportunity. As the audience here isn't necessarily familiar with GIIN's activities, I'd like to start by asking you, how would you describe what you do?
Well, thank you. I'm very grateful and honored to be here. I want to thank Marina for organizing this wonderful event. And I actually thought I'd start off by answering your question by just taking stock of who we have here and what this event represents, because I do think it's actually quite powerful. So if you think about who's at this event, it represents a broad section of people who are investors. So whether it's wealthy families, institutional investors from all around the world, people who are representing big global banks, big Brazilian banks, banks from other parts of Latin America, and then entrepreneurs and people who are building businesses and high-impact companies and funds all throughout the country and throughout the world. And that, in essence, if you think about this community, replicated all around the world. So people who are like you, but dealing with issues in India, in China, in Singapore, in Denmark, in the Netherlands, in Switzerland, and so on, that really embodies the network that comprises the GIIN. So the Global Impact Investing Network, or the GIIN for short, my organization, is a global network that includes over 30,000 people who are incredibly diverse, but all share one common conviction. And that is they believe in the power of capital to have a positive impact on the world. We have 330 formal member organizations. So these are big global banks, big institutional investors, smaller funds, family offices, multifamily offices, some government-backed institutions. It's an incredibly diverse group, but what they all have in common is a commitment to the belief that money can do more than just make more money. And the GIIN supports this global network. Our mission is to really accelerate the growth and development of impact investing because we believe that impact investing is so critical to addressing the world's social and environmental problems. Our activities, we do a lot of work to make investors more effective. So we have a lot of tools around impact measurement and how to drive impact performance. We also provide a lot of research and data, so investors have the data they need at their fingertips to be more effective at achieving their financial and impact objectives. And I'm happy to go more into those, but I think I just want to say it's incredibly exciting to be here in Brazil, and there's so much dynamism in this market and so much entrepreneurial activity that I think this is an inflection point in the evolution of impact investing in this country.
Sustainable and impact investments appear to be gaining momentum worldwide. I'd like to ask you to summarize what has happened last year, because I think we saw a lot of things coming from the mainstream.
That's right, and I think, and some of them were touched upon in the conference already, but just to give an overarching summary, as you heard from Rodrigo's presentation, many of these concepts and activities are not brand new. But in the last few years, there's been an incredible amount of momentum to this shift in thinking. And what I mean by a shift in thinking is the shift that money can also, in addition to generating more money, also play a role in addressing social and environmental factors. And last year, there was an incredible number of developments that I think were quite powerful. So we of course, it was referred to yesterday that the Business Roundtable, which is this network of primarily American multinational companies, incredible capitalists, came out with a point of view that they should not be running their companies just in service of shareholders only, but should also be thinking about other stakeholders, so customers, employees, communities, and the environment. Of course, it's been referred to many times, but Larry Fink's letter that just came out about a month ago, which built on previous kind of letters that he'd written, but really put climate risk front and center for all of BlackRock's investment strategies with specific things that they would be doing to implement that approach. We also have this very interesting development that a lot of people who have become quite wealthy very quickly, from the technology communities and from finance, have been speaking about how there's a need to change and evolve capitalism. Now, this, of course, is the very high level. It's very conceptual. But I also think what we're seeing is a growing level of interest from ordinary individuals, so people who don't have massive amounts of wealth or power. One thing that I'd cite that I think is really interesting is that last year the UK government surveyed their population, general public, and 6,000 people, a survey that represented the national population, and found that 68% of savers in the UK wanted their money to be invested sustainably. And so we have people who are kind of at the top of the pyramid, with who have incredible decision-making power, and ordinary individuals, all calling for a shift in the system to really make sure that investment played a role in helping to address the world's social and environmental problems.
This is very interesting. Rodrigo Tavares from Granito just mentioned this number that we have, $5 billion invested in impact investments. I suppose this is the number related to 2018 from last year's survey. I know you don't have the fresh numbers released already, but can you share something with us?
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to give a sense for the number that Rodrigo and you referred to was last year we published a size of the global impact investing market. And our estimate is that it's $502 billion globally, and that's assets under management. And depending on how you look at it, it's an incredibly large sum because many investors are just becoming aware of impact investing for the first time. But in the light of the potential, has plenty of room for growth. Our research has found that that in kind of the year-over-year growth of existing investors' portfolios, so not including all the people who are entering the market, is about 17% annually, which is a strong growth rate. And then if you think about all the people who are coming into this market, even the people who have just been active here at this conference in Brazil, it speaks to a lot of future potential growth. One thing that I also think is important to highlight is that based on our research, we also segment the market by region. And Latin America and the Caribbean are the second largest region in the world in terms of assets under management. Now, of course, that's covering an entire continent as well as the Caribbean, but I do think it's important to note that there is a lot of activity here, and clearly based on the discussion at this event, there's an incredible amount of growth potential that is being articulated by all the different investors who are just becoming active in impact investing right now.
Can you break down this number a little? You just mentioned region, but in terms of asset classes and types of investors, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. And so we look in terms of types of investors, it is quite diverse. So it's fund managers, large and small, so global asset managers, as well as specialized impact investment funds. And we have examples of those who've actually presented here, talking about the work in Brazil. It also includes the activities of institutional investors, wealthy individuals, private banks, and development finance institutions. And so it is an incredibly diverse set of investors. I think that diversity brings a lot of power because it's what we're trying to do is really represent integrated thinking. How do we integrate the power of the markets and the power of entrepreneurial activity with the need to affect social and environmental progress? So I think we're at the beginning of a big shift, and we can come back maybe to the scenarios because I thought the futurists who presented yesterday had some really interesting and provocative ways of thinking that really resonates with how we think at the GIIN. But it is an incredibly dynamic and diverse market.
And what, in your opinion, is the role of private investments in the achievement of the SDGs, and particularly in the climate change?
Sure. Yeah, I think the SDGs represent a very powerful shift in global thinking. And of course these were launched in 2015. And for those of you who are less familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, all the member states of the United Nations committed to these goals. And Vanessa and I are surrounded by them in these great colorful boxes. But what they represent is a very high-level agenda for a 15-year agenda, ending it by 2030, of building a more sustainable world. And they're incredibly expansive, and I think they provide a very powerful framework for investors who can really understand how their work fits into a broader agenda. Now, the United Nations estimates that you need like $3 to $5 trillion in additional funding per year to achieve the SDGs, which is a massive amount of money. Now, some of that will come from government, some of it will come from civil society and philanthropy, but one thing that is absolutely certain is that the goals cannot be achieved if we do not invest differently. One of the things that the GIIN has done is launch an impact measurement and management system called IRIS+. That's spelled IRIS with a plus sign. And it is a comprehensive system that takes these global goals, so something like promoting gender equality or clean and affordable energy access, which are signed at the United Nations level, and brings them down to the business level of what are the core metrics that a company and investor should be using to measure their performance towards those goals. So I think it's an incredibly powerful framework, and I will say that I've actually been surprised at how influential it has been for leading investors from around the world. Because increasingly large institutional investors and big global banks at the executive level are asking what they're contributing to the SDGs, and then that's actually leading to some shifts in their investment behavior, which I think will mean a lot more growth for impact investing and sustainable investing more broadly.
I just saw the sign. We have 5 more minutes, so I'm going to jump to the 2 last questions I have here. One of the most important topics, I think, is that as the interest in impact investments are increasing, banks, corporations, they all want to look nice in the photo. So we have this risk of adopting impact washing. So what can we do to prevent that? What can be done to what safeguards can be created to avoid it?
No, it's a great question, and this risk of impact washing is something that we pay very close attention to at the GIIN. Our overall strategy is focused on scale with integrity. And what I mean scale is to mobilize much more capital to address the Sustainable Development Goals, much more capital to help heal the planet and help include more communities and populations that are left out by all the development we see around the world. But the other part of that, integrity, is also key, because we don't just need capital at scale, we need impact at scale. And that's really what motivates all of us to be here together, is how do we actually have a dramatic impact on things like rising inequality and climate change. And so we do a lot of work to help safeguard the integrity of impact investing. A couple things I'll mention is last year we published core characteristics for impact investing. So these are baseline expectations of what good impact investing looks like. You can access it on our website, and it'll help you understand if you're looking at an investment opportunity or if you're developing an investment strategy yourself, what you should be doing to safeguard the integrity of your work. I also mentioned IRIS+, and I should also highlight that it's free and it's online, so anyone can use it. In the 8 months since its launch, we have over 4,500 users all around the world. Hopefully everyone in Brazil will use it. We make it available to support all of you in becoming more effective. But that really allows you to focus on impact performance. So intentions are critical, and they really matter, but we also want those intentions to lead to real impact results.
And to finalize, what advice would you give to Brazilian investors and professionals from the financial markets that are interested in developing this market here?
Well, and I really appreciate that, and I'll come at this question from two different perspectives. I think one is that one thing that the reason why I'm here in part is two things. One, I think there's a lot happening here that I personally want to learn from and bring to the global network. And then my hope is that I also can get clear on how the GIIN and our global community can better support the Brazilian impact investors. I think one thing that the reason why we were founded as a network and a global network is because we want to help accelerate our collective learning. So if there's a great thing being developed here in Brazil or a wonderful thing approach being developed in India, the world will be better off if that circulates the world faster, and that you operating here in Brazil can learn from the best thinking. And everyone else from around the world can learn from the best thinking in Brazil. And so my hope is that for all the work that's being done here in Brazil, leverage resources like what we offer at the GIIN, and hopefully you can use our research and our impact measurement tools to help you become more effective, and also feed into them. We do research, and we'd love to have Brazilian perspectives represented in those. And so I do think it's a two-way dialogue that's really critical. The other thing that I wanted to highlight, though, is that just recognizing that the incredible breadth of this conference is covering, and I think that everything from the sessions with the futurists yesterday that really ask this high-level question that's so important about what world are we ultimately investing in, and the way I think about it is it's one thing to think about how much money you have to leave to your children. Or how much money you can provide to your pensioners if you're an institutional investor. But we also want to think about what world are they going to be living in with those resources. And I think connecting that all the way down to the individual action level, and even some of the reflective work that's been done here at this conference is really important. And one thing I do really want to underscore is that if we want a better world, we have to invest in it. And every single person here, and all of your peers all around the world have a role to play in influencing this dramatic shift. Because we have the tools, we have models, we have resources, we have leading institutions and leading individuals from all different sectors of society. And so there are not many excuses now to act. There's a lot of learning that we need to do, so I think approaching it with humility is really important. But this is an incredibly exciting time for impact investing globally. And one thing that's been quite clear from this event is that it's an incredibly exciting time for impact investing in Brazil. So thank you.
Thank you, Amit.